G'day and welcome to Talking Aussie Farming. I'm your host, Jono Weinstock from FarmCap. And today we're joined by a very special guest, Danny Thomas from LAWD. Danny is well renowned as a leading real estate professional, dealing primarily at the top end of town with a generation of experience. Danny, welcome to the show.
Good on you, Jono. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure to have you here. Curiosity is people must have with you and what you do. Working at the top end of town. Tell us a bit about how you got into real estate and ended up, selling the premier farms in the country.
The whole thing's a bloody accident, Johnny. Yeah. So I'm a country boy and a farmer's son, and did work experience in high school with a livestock agent and with a real estate agent and with the ag department. And I said to the careers teacher in year 11 or year 10, when you had to sort of choose what you're going to do, I'm really interested in being a real estate agent. And he said, well, that sounds really dumb to me, Danny. And I said, why is that, Bill? And he said, because you only got to go to TAFE, do a short course to become a real estate agent. You should go and do a degree, you got good marks and things. And they've got this degree course at RMIT. So I trundled off to RMIT to do a Bachelor of Business in Property, and I thought I'd do the real estate stream there. It'd be 4 years of university study to still just be a real estate agent, if you like. Right. And I was there with in my first class, and I met a guy called Peter Sagar, and Peter and I are business partners now at Lord, right. And we've been lifelong friends. And Peter said to me, I've just been out selling real estate, Danny. I did the TAFE course, and I've come back to uni to do valuations. And he said, I think valuations is a better grounding if you're going to be a real estate professional than just doing real estate. So I did valuations, fell into a job with the government when Jeff Kennett was in power. And in that period of time, they were doing a lot of infrastructure work. So I ended up in the area where they do compulsory acquisition. Mm-hmm. And most of the compulsory acquisition work was in the country. So we were talking to farmers every day, going there, having very uncomfortable conversations about the fact that we wanted to put a freeway through their place or a railway line through their place.
Yeah, right. Sounds like the castle.
Yeah, it honed the negotiation skills. And so I did that I did that government work for not quite 10 years, and then went into private practice as a property valuer for another 5 years, and I was recruited by CBRE, and it was the CEO at CBRE that said to me after doing valuations for 15 years, he's a Welsh guy, Tom Southern, and he said, you're not a valuer, you're a bloody real estate agent.
Right.
So I started selling real estate.
There you go.
I think my first deal was 28 million. And so...
Not a bad start.
Yeah, so I didn't have what you'd call the conventional real estate grounding, if you like. I came out of valuations, went straight into doing institutional scale deals.
Yeah, right. That's very impressive. And, you've got the track record and runs on the board. What does it take to work on a transaction, whether it's a $1 million family farm or a $100 million family farm? What are the major differences, do you think, in the people you deal with? And
it's exactly the same amount of work. Mm-hmm. And I might say the smaller the deal, often the more work there is. So when you're dealing with family dynamics and those sorts of things, you're selling a smaller farm. So many of the listings now, and it's a little sad if you're romantic about agriculture. So many of the listings now that you get, sub $20 million will be the divestment of a family farm. Mm-hmm. That's either a generation of someone's endeavour or multiple generations of endeavour. And, that family's coming to the end of their ownership journey. They've decided either through necessity or quite consciously to do a financial succession. So they appoint someone like us to take their property to market and sell it. And so that's a very serious undertaking. Mm-hmm. When you're selling, someone's life's work or many lives' work for that family. And so when you're dealing with that dynamic, often you're doing more reporting, more kitchen table talks, mm-hmm. more catch-ups and taking them on the journey through the sale than what you are if you're representing an institutional vendor.
Right, okay, which is probably more number-driven.
That's right.
Black and white.
They're more coin-operated.
Totally. Look, that's the market we play in day-to-day, right, is $1 to $20 million kind of net asset land value transactions. So we're literally sitting around the table meeting the pets and the kids home from school, and there is some romantic factor. Thankfully, we've had a clean record to date and haven't had any issues, but they're typically coming to us because they've had some financial challenges. So we're very mindful of that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, as you get into that institutional space, I guess you've got totally different dynamics.
Yeah, I might add, it shouldn't be any less important when you're selling one of these big places.
No,
because the investors that sit behind that are often people who are participating in a pension fund of some
mum and dad
description.
super fund.
And so that's all mum and dad money too. It's just that the people that are running it are probably they're very astute. They've got fiduciary duties. They take it seriously, but they're probably less emotionally invested.
That's true.
Yeah,
no, that is true. And I guess there's different dynamics at each level of the market. And I guess just given your experience, and particularly now, what's happening at the top end, say $50 to $100 million plus, I guess, in terms of what's driving demand and what are the issues that buyers and sellers are facing at that end?
It's still quite busy. Yeah, in some respects, and it goes against everyone's intuition when you say this, and it's not the first time I've said it. There's more liquidity above 50 million than there is between 20 million and 50 million.
Right.
It's easier to sell it's easier to sell a larger place than what it is to sell something that's sort of in between.
Mm-hmm.
But those properties that are sort of in that $20 to $50 million space, there aren't a lot of families that can deal on that. So by geography and by commodity, there are other big families that can suck up a place like that nearby. But if you're in a fragmented market, say something that was closer settled or soldier settled back in the 50s, you're unlikely to have many buyers who can act at that level. They might have a $20, $30 or $40 million farm, but then it gets very hard for them to take the leap to double the size of what they've got and buy another $20, $30 or $40 million farm. Those farms, though, tend to lack appeal from most of the institutions.
Too small, not enough scale.
That's right.
Yep.
Or too much work to do, or there's easier things for them to buy. So they can be quite difficult to sell, properties in that bracket. And when you're doing one of those, that's the time when you need to be a bit more creative. Need to think about terms, or whether or not you need to break it up into smaller parts to get it sold, or whether or not you need to marry that asset with something else to create some scale, to create some institutional appeal.
That's true.
Yeah,
I think we see that as well. As soon as you see a COO and a CFO and an operations team who aren't actually milking the cows, that's when profits disappear. And
can do.
And I guess the farms we typically work with, owner operated with kids in the business, and they tend to be more profitable. So I can see how scale matters. And then I guess what's driving buyer interest or sentiment at the $100 million plus? Is it? I'm guessing if you're an institutional investor, you want stability, consistency, minimal volatility wherever possible. Water, all those kind of things.
And it's got to be in mandate. So all of these buyers will have different mandates. We've got big investors in the market like, Public Sector Pension Investment Board, Manulife and Westchester and all of these large institutions. And, they're relatively traditional investors. They're quite disciplined about what they're trying to get in terms of a cash return, which sectors and geographies they want to be invested in. More recently, we've seen back in the Australian market the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So that's colloquially the Mormons. Yeah,
they're like quite a large agricultural holder in Australia, right?
Yeah. So they've been really active and done some smart deals. Those groups are what I'd call mostly traditional or old world style investors. It's very much about what can the land produce, what's the return. We are seeing a new wave of capital coming into the market, though, which has sort of been branded natural capital investors, and they're the guys that are looking at environmental plantings, biodiversity credits, carbon credits, water entitlements.
Solar energy projects.
Yeah, some of that laid in there as well. That's right. Okay. So, renewables generally. Yeah. So that there's a lot of new money there for that, and some of it's as simple as buying large swathes of higher rainfall land for plantation forestry purposes, but with a carbon bent, if you know what I mean. So you are seeing a lot of activity in that part of the market. In Northern Australia, you're also seeing the existing market participants and a lot of the large families, buying big chunks. There's some big deals being done, through Queensland and the Northern Territory, by families and some families supported by institutions, and some institutions that are writing big checks, and they're going sort of post-farm gate as well. So we've been very busy in the feedlot space. Okay. Just seeing consolidation of those supply chains, processors coming down, producers going up, and the place where they seem to be meeting in the middle in the supply chains, feedlots at the present time. So it's a lot of consolidation there too.
And I'm guessing with scale, I mean, how big is too big to become unmanageable, or the larger funds? I'm guessing they have time horizons too, right? So some families might be generational owners, whereas I'm guessing some of these funds have some kind of expectation to move on and move into some other asset.
Yeah, so it really depends. So it depends what part of the cycle the market's into. So we got appointed by Proterra to divest one of their portfolios down in Western Victoria and Southeast South Australia. And we took that to market as a portfolio or as a breakup. We ended up doing 30 or 40 deals there to maximise the price.
Okay.
All that went to locals. The institutional bids were, about 15% less than what we could get by doing the breakup.
Is that right? Okay.
So we rolled our sleeves up and did the hard work and did the 30 or 40 deals.
Okay.
And that was a great outcome for that fund. Now, they'd gone to all the trouble of building 26 or 27,000 hectares as a portfolio, and it was interesting for the instos to look at as a portfolio. Yeah. But the highest and best value was to break it up.
Break it up. Yeah. That's what we like about ag as well. It's divisible.
Yeah,
right? So farmers have lots of options. It's not, an apartment with one owner in Collingwood.
There's lots of titles. There's land and water.
Land, and there's flexibility of what you can and can't do. That's part of the attraction that most city real estate professionals probably don't appreciate or understand.
That's right.
We try and educate our investors. There's multiple ways out.
The LVRs are lower.
LVRs are much lower. They're cash poor farmers, but asset rich, which is kind of how we saw the opportunity, in providing funding to these farmers when they can't get it from a bank. It's funny, just quickly on liquidity, it's funny you mentioned that. I guess we're trying to play in that under 2 million space where there aren't many options. And then, 2 to 10 mil is still quite limited. And then you kind of get that in terms of bankability and credit. So I guess the availability of credit must impact, buyers' interest as well and rates.
I think the unintended consequence of the Royal Commission is that by imposing these reporting requirements, for people to show interest cover and how they're going to pay the money back and whatever else, even on very low LVRs.
Very low LVRs, correct. Yeah.
Some of these people wouldn't have 10% gearing, but that requirement, that they've got to meet for the banks actually creates a space for you and your peers to play in, because they become hard to bank.
Totally, and our argument is, but with the money they can achieve this, and the banks just want history and runs on the board. Whereas I guess we can look at it pragmatically and go, this makes total sense. We're helping them solve a commercial problem to be better off in 12 months' time. And in our experience, they've all ended up safely back with a bank or a safe exit with some kind of organised debt reduction.
It's a good stepping stone.
Yeah, correct. And then as you get up the ranks, like that $50 to $200 million debt space, I guess, impacts. And I'm guessing the institutional players probably have the balance sheets to access credit, which must help.
Yeah, and they're sought after. Like the banks compete compete hard for that sort of work.
Right.
And at the top end now we're seeing larger institutions come into lending as well. So, there's a business in Australia now called Foundation Agri, which is lending money for PGIM out of the United States. It's a large insurance fund. You can get a fixed rate mortgage with those guys for 10 or 20 years
That's
now.
Right. It's a good product.
And there'll be a space for that in our market too.
Yeah. What's it like dealing with a billionaire family versus dealing with a large corporate the dynamics of turning up to the kitchen table and wearing the wrong pair of shoes. You might be wearing Blundstones instead of RMs and gently offend someone unintentionally versus, sitting in a boardroom at, in a skyscraper in Hong Kong, or somewhere in the world. It must be quite different dynamics on the private. You got the private jet and the helicopter versus probably you might be lucky for premium economy from some of those other guys.
There are probably different classes of billionaire families. So I had a friend say to me one day in relation to agriculture, some people think that they're going to be good in ag because they're big, whereas the reality of things is that the guys that are big in ag are good. That's why they're big, So there are the billionaire families that, you get lucky enough to meet. I went for a little drive the other day, and I was sort of through southern Queensland and into New South Wales, and I caught up with 5 families, and one of them had many hundreds of millions of dollars worth of property, and 3 of them had well over $1 billion worth of property, and they're largely unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And you go and meet these people, and it's a real privilege, I might add.
Mm-hmm.
You go and meet these people, they're very welcoming of you to invite you in, and all of them said to me, which I'm sort of befuddled by, it's a bit embarrassing. All of them said to me when I was leaving, "Thank you for taking the time to come and see us."
Isn't that remarkable?
Unbelievable. It's we really appreciate your time. We know you're busy.
Huh.
And of course, on the other side of that, I'm thinking to myself, what a privilege it is that I get to work with those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're outstanding people.
Yeah.
And incredibly successful. And I always leave, after I've caught up with them, I leave inspired,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And
hopefully with a free box of lemons is on the way out or something. Yeah.
But how's the humility?
Yeah.
These are people that have grown, and they all had a small start.
Mm-hmm.
But they've grown, what start they were given into incredibly big, dynamic, farming businesses. They've been very, very successful.
That's right. But they value humbleness, and privacy, I'm guessing, and obviously trust.
Privacy is a big deal.
Well, I was going to say it must be tricky. Yeah. So you never know. If you look up Danny Thomas's listings or transactions, you would hope that most of them probably wouldn't appear publicly if you're trying to offload. But at the same time, you have to market. And reach the market one way or another.
Well, that's the other thing I would say.
If I said, Danny, please come and sell my $1 billion portfolio, I don't want anyone to know about it.
Yeah, well, that would be tricky. That gets a bit difficult. Yeah. So I'm critical of this, and so there's a divergence of views about how you should go about this, and I've got some peers and competitors who don't agree with my view.
Yeah,
but I'm not a secret agent. I know I look a lot like James Bond, but I'm not a secret agent. I don't think you're doing the right thing by the portfolio, shepherding or stewarding a sale, discreetly into 1 or 2 groups who you think are the right groups.
Yes.
I think when you do an open process, it doesn't have to be something that's in the papers, but I think when you take something to market properly, and you really do take it to market and you canvass the whole market, you're very regularly surprised, how good a result you'll get. And the outperformance that we achieved through 21, 22, 23 on some of those very large portfolios was because we took it to market. We thought we knew, and we all do, those that are doing it every day, who the likely purchasers are.
Mm-hmm.
And they were participants. They did bid.
Okay.
But, we were lucky enough to find buyers who bid, 10 and 20% more, who weren't necessarily on our radar. There's new money coming into the market all the time.
Okay.
And so I would say most of the time you'll get the best result if you do a public process.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I guess at the end of the day, they want to maximise their return, and they've got some kind of public profile figure, whether they like it or not anyway, and they're used to dealing with it.
People get worried. People get worried about that stuff, we don't make a big deal about who the vendors are.
No, but it is refreshing to hear that, the families are quite grounded at that level and working, probably very hands-on in the business and and living on the land too. So I'm sure very down to earth.
Yep.
I've got to ask you, have you ever been approached by a TV reality show on a Lux listing, top end of town, drama central.
It's funny that we've got this microphone here. I've got more of a face for radio, John.
Face for radio.
I refuse to answer the question on the grounds I may incriminate myself.
Okay, fair enough. Look, I've got to say I haven't watched more than 2 minutes of it. It's not really my style, but I can see that it's just a curiosity factor about, I guess, high-end real estate and the drama of fighting for listings, and that's probably more exclusive luxury property than.
Yeah, it's a bit cheesy.
It's a bit cheesy. Okay. Farm Wants a Wife's a bit different. That's a bit more fun and interesting. My missus says I should apply. I said, no, thanks, I'm good. I guess just back to, property and real estate. Right now, I guess if you had an open checkbook as an investor, what kind of sectors or commodities would you look at now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like, and you see some of the clients sort of targeting this stuff as well. I like a lot of the old, if I can call them this, broken down irrigation districts. So, from early 1900, and then there was a sort of a real boom on it through the soldier settlement era. On both sides of the Murray River, there were a whole lot of irrigation districts created. Most of the assets in those districts were, relatively small, and today absolutely subscale. And so, where I've had a dalliance in the market has been in those areas where, there's an opportunity to consolidate land and transform its use. I've been mucking around at the periphery, but, guys that have been incredibly successful at it, people like Go Farm, so they've gone into northern Victoria, on the Goulburn River or the Murray River system. They've gone into New South Wales on the Murray or the Murrumbidgee, and they've taken irrigation assets and they've repurposed them and developed them into almonds and olives and those sorts of things, and they've done it very, very well. I think that's a big opportunity, and then that investment thesis holds true across all other commodities too. If you've got an opportunity to go into a market and consolidate and build scale, and you're not eroding value on the way through, if 1 and 1 equals 2.5, because you're getting a scale benefit, then that's good business. A friend of mine over in Western Australia is a good client, John Nicoletti. He did the same all through the Eastern Wheat Belt. His portfolio that we sold to Salic, a number of years ago, was actually the amalgam of what I think was originally 200 farms.
Right.
And so by the time he'd finished, doing the consolidation, that was one farm. And I think you'll see more and more of that, and there'll continue to be consolidation of agricultural land, particularly in those highly fragmented areas. Okay.
I have had these discussions around the irrigation. Can Australia handle? Well, I guess it's long term capital, but every time I look at the economics of an almond farm, I go, this makes complete sense. You've got to be patient and look at the yields and the returns. It's phenomenal. There's a global market there. Who's prepared to roll the sleeves up and make it happen? There's a lot of land ripe for development there.
Yeah, and it's those guys with patient capital. It's instos and pension funds that have long dated liabilities that can take a position and go through the 6 or 7 or 8 year sort of hockey stick to maturity.
That's true. What about just broad acre land? How high can it go? Like how hard is a farmer prepared to work or pay for a hectare of land to only be able to grow 1 to 3 or 4 tons at $300 a ton?
I think people have been saying those things and challenging, the increase in the value of land for the last 100 years. And every time we think we can't get any more out of the land, there's a new shift in technology. There's new cultivars that are developed that produce more with less. The grain growing farming community in Australia has become so exceptionally good at growing grain on very little moisture. And it's because of the combined effects of water management, making sure that they control any moisture that does hit the ground. They spray the weeds and whatever else and keep the moisture in the ground. They've got new varieties that they're using all the time that can handle, a slower start or a harder finish or whatever else. And so, you see them adopting that as new technology, and then from a plant and equipment point of view, that stuff's getting better and better all the time. You know, like in terms of putting the crop in, spot spraying,
precision and
all the precision ag stuff.
So it's productivity. Very so farmers continue to become more productive, inevitably grow more. And
the barrier to that is having the capital to take the next step.
Yeah.
And so you need scale to be able to buy some of that gear. You need working capital to be able to put your crop in.
That's right. And the neighbour's land to be able to maximise the use of that $2 million new piece of kit.
That's right.
That you probably shouldn't have bought at the last field day.
And then and then one of the big steps that I think you'll see a lot of these farm businesses, it's going to be quickly adopted in broadacre, I think, and then behind that I think you'll see horticulture and other groups do it too. Are these autonomous machines? Not needing a person to drive this stuff. And being able to go and spray your weeds, 24 hours a day, those sorts of things, I think that's the next shift.
What's your view? And I had every time I speak to a new investor who doesn't understand agriculture, they see the bushfires last week and go, and it turns into a bit of a panic. Then they see a flood, and then they see a cyclone, and natural disasters. Welcome to farming. And I kind of have to dig out, the areas that were impacted by bushfire. I kind of look at it, none of it was arable. So there was no downside to yield. But these are little challenges that I have to kind of educate non-agri investors. Does it, it's obviously cycle. And to be fair, a farmer who's experienced one of these disasters, it typically impacts short-term cash flow for a season or two or three, droughts. The banks give them some grief, and then they ring us a year later and say, we've got all this equity. We're actually come out of the flood event. Our cows are fine now. The land's fine. We need some help. And the bank's still trying to boot them out. So to us, that actually creates opportunities to help these farmers get back on their feet. But in terms of, potential buyers or sellers, how do they look at these natural events?
It might be the catalyst for someone that's been thinking about selling or, is older and, ready to go. One of those events might be the sort of straw that breaks the camel's back, if you like, where they say, right, well, now I'm finally going. Most of it's just normal farming, to deal with droughts and flooding rains, as Dorothea McKellar would have said it. So, no, I think it's sort of largely overblown in that news cycle. When those things are happening, like it's dangerous and it's important, and people are trying to protect assets and lives and livestock and whatever else. And I live at Yea with my wife and kids, and we were evacuated during that fire that burned out what I think is 185,000 hectares, and wiped out Ruffy and all those other towns and highlands. And we have a lot of friends there who have either had part of or all of their properties burnt out. And what's the impact? Okay, so there's the immediate emotional effect. You've lost things that were in your house and whatever else. Some of our friends lost all their livestock, and so that can be, quite emotional. It's actually, I think, more emotional when the livestock are burnt but not dead. And, you're there and you need to euthanize animals and whatever else, the bird hunters and bird feet and those sorts of things. But, that's all terrible. But for those people who are appropriately insured, it's just time. So time to go and refence your property, repasture your property, and then buy some livestock and, roll your sleeves up and do it again. The real tragedy is for those people who are not insured who are grossly underinsured.
Right.
That really knocks you around. And that can be the bit where, you're financially distressed. And so there are inevitably people who haven't thought about that from a risk management point of view, who find themselves under financial duress, and those people will have to sell.
That's true.
And that's just a reality of things, unfortunately.
That's true. But interestingly, during drought years 18 to 20, broadacre kept going up. There was probably a scarcity of listings. There was, I'm not sure at the top end.
Interest rates were 1 or 2%.
Yeah, correct. Long-term value of food and fibre security, it's not going anywhere. So I found that quite fascinating, and I often use that chart to explain to people, look, if it doesn't rain for 2 years, the land value is unlikely to drop.
Yeah, that's right.
In the short term.
I mean, we did see drops in land values in some of the higher rainfall cropping districts where, things really were bid up. But to the extent that they came down, 10 or 15% or whatever it was of an extraordinarily high base. That portfolio I was talking about before in Western Victoria, where we sort of outperformed, what the institutions were offering. We sold those assets, to people at, $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 an acre, for land that 5 years before was half of that. So that market accelerated very quickly. They had a run of 5 very good seasons, and money was cheap.
Money was cheap, yeah.
And people made a conscious decision that they wanted to expand. So they competed with their neighbours and they bought assets.
Yeah. What's your view of, foreign ownership? Can be a touchy topic for some, but at the same time, I guess what impact would it have if Australia was more flexible with allowing more foreign ownership in? I mean, are they knocking on the door, campaigning? Is it good for Australia? Is it bad for? It's probably good for landowners to create more competition. But yeah, what's your view?
We don't say that they can't come here, foreign owners, it says at the present time. We just have this regulatory regime which greatly benefits people like me, frankly, and I'm not convinced necessarily benefits the market or the landowners. So we have this Foreign Investment Review Board requirement that agricultural land, if it's to be sold to a foreign investor, is advertised. Well, that's great for me. Great for a business like mine.
Yeah.
But I don't know that it adds a lot to what the outcome is for the vendors, and I don't know that it necessarily means that by advertising it that the locals have any fairer opportunity than what they did before. And that's what it's about. These regulations that require land to be advertised for a foreign purchaser to buy it, and for there to be this third-party approval, this political approval, is all about making sure that Aussies get a chance to buy this stuff. Now,
right, okay.
There's lots and lots of money that wants to be invested in ag in Australia. It's not competing with 90% of the Australian buyers. It's competing with sort of 10% of the Australian buyers that can act in that,
in that level of
that 30, 40, $50 million plus space, So, to say, a Chinese investor came in and bought up all this land around me, and but for him I would have bought it. I find it hard to cop that as being actually fair income, Right. I think it's more of a xenophobia and, someone saying, well, I've got a problem with the fact that it's a Chinese investor that's bought this stuff. I'm brutally the other way, Jono, which doesn't win me any points with anybody.
Right.
I could scarcely care less where the money comes from because they give that to a vendor, and very typically it's an Australian vendor that we're acting for that, as I said before, has put their life's work into the asset or many generations of work into the asset. All we want is to maximise their exit.
Yeah, that's right.
I think they're entitled to have their exit maximised.
100%, yeah. I just think we're a bit restricted. I think there's a percentage ownership restriction, and so...
No, there's not.
There's not? Oh,
no.
Okay. I thought... So the floodgates are open.
There's no cap,
No cap on the amount of foreign ownership of Australian agriculture.
Just it has to be approved by no less than the Treasurer.
There you go. Okay, well, I got that wrong. Okay, I thought there was a cap restricting potential buyers overseas, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
How does Australian ag stack up relative to, ag land internationally?
Well, our market isn't protected in the way that we just sort of talked about then. If you're a foreign investor and you want to go into some of these other countries and buy land, you regularly can't.
Right. Okay.
There are restrictions on being able to buy agricultural land in some of those other markets, which again perplexes me. I don't really understand why.
Okay, so that makes it attractive for the Canadian pension fund to look at Australia as opposed to
that's right,
Argentina or USA.
And so some of the feedback I get, from some of those international investors is, oh look, we're really concerned we're overweight Australia. And I say to them, what do you mean you're overweight Australia?
Right.
Well, we're meant to have a certain amount in Europe and we're meant to have a certain amount in South America and we're overweight in Australia.
Right.
And I say, well, why is that? And they said, well, we can actually do deals in Australia. We can get money invested there. It gets harder for us to do deals in some of those other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, it's a good place to do business here relative to others. But yeah, I guess at that scale, they're looking at portfolio position and diversification, all those other challenges. Now, Danny, outside of work, what do you do for fun? Are you still a farmer yourself? Growing a few animals and I'm still hands in the game.
I'm not much of a farmer, but the guys that work with us are farmers.
Yeah.
And so, we push some cattle around on some land that we own and lease at Yea, and they're Wagyu cattle. And I must say I get great enjoyment out of that. So on a Saturday or Sunday, if I'm feeling grumpy, I'll go for a drive through the place and, walk into the paddock and the cattle will come up and whatever else, and that's sort of cathartic relief for me. I quite enjoy that. I enjoy getting in the yards from time to time. I don't think the workers enjoy me getting in the yards from time to time. I think they think I'm a pain in the arse. But no, I do. I get great enjoyment out of that. And I've got two young children, Matilda 8 and Harry 4.
Okay.
And Harry's just at that age where he's getting a bit more interesting now too, and talking and whatever else. And we went to one of the properties and had a look at Matilda's cows the other day, and Harry said, "Why are we at this farm, Dad?" I said, "We're looking at Matilda's cows." He said, No, I want to go to the big farm. So he wanted to go and have a longer day driving around looking at more cattle at the bigger farm.
Right.
He didn't want to just look at Matilda's cows. And so I was a bit chuffed about that. He sort of he's caught the disease as well, I think.
Right, he's thinking big.
Harry? Yeah, that's right. He wanted to go and spend more time looking at more cows. So that was good.
Oh, good. Do you see a future in ag for yourself and family?
Well, I'm doing a bit more of it. So I've stepped back a bit at Lord. I'm not on the board anymore. All I do is deals, which is quite liberating.
Okay.
So I've been the boss in one way, shape or form for many years in the businesses that I've been in, and I'm enjoying not being the boss.
Right.
And just doing the deals. And so what I'm finding is that gives me a bit more time to be at home as well. And being at home a bit more, I'm getting much more interested in the farming.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay.
so it's good.
Oh, doing deals is I guess what got you there in the first place. Yeah. And I mean, you've got such credibility and trust in the market over such a long period of time that it's an incredible and valuable contribution to any business, I'm guessing, and very hard to replicate. For any budding new overambitious real estate agent who's probably looking at you, and they probably don't realise the hard yards of what it takes to get there to build that level of trust with people.
I'm not convinced it's that hard, though, to be honest with you, Joe. So we were sort of thinking about this the other day. I'm not convinced that there are a lot of natural competitors for what I do nationally, but geographically, there's some very good agents that I come up against when I'm pitching for work. And they do a good job, and they're at companies like Elders and Ray White and Collier's, and in their patch, they are kings of their patch. They're formidable competition, But if I'm critical of agents generally, it's that not enough of them are interested enough in what their clients do. And so if there's a secret sauce, that I can share with you, it's that you should be spending much, much more time with your clients. And it's not about selling to them. It's about building rapport, making them realise that you're thinking about them, and without being cheesy about it, trying to understand more what it is they're looking for, what their mandates are, how you can help them, and what geographies and what commodities they want to be in. And what I tend to find is, if you take the time to go and catch up with an existing client or a prospective client, and you just ask some questions, what are you looking at? Where do you want to be? Those sorts of things. What's your mandate, basically? They'd love to tell. They're busting to tell you.
Yeah, that's right.
And not enough people do it. there's something that's happened when everyone went to real estate school where someone got told, oh, you're going to make 4,000 phone calls a day and
letterbox drops.
And that's right. And then you put the ad in the paper and that's all you do and everyone will come to you. That's not right. You know, if you want to add value for the buying community, when you have a listing, you should be thinking about how it fits into their mandate. So here's this thing I've got. It's a 20,000 acre cropping property. Who are all the groups, local and international, who'd be interested in that 20,000 acre cropping property and why?
So you're spending more time with the buyers, not just the sellers.
Well, you've got to understand what they're looking for, and there's nothing better than going and seeing a buyer with something to show them. But you don't always have something to show them.
No.
And the other thing that happens, you know, across the 10 or 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is that we've been doing it, is mandates evolve and change. They end up with separate managed accounts, different buckets of money. One day you'll be talking to a manager who says, I've got $500 million of money that wants to be in the sale and leaseback space. And then, 12 months later they'll have raised $200 million that wants to be in direct farming. And it's to grow cotton, So you need to be talking to them all the time about what they're looking for.
Totally, yeah.
And then if you're lucky enough, the money that's sitting behind them might talk to you too.
Okay.
So then you get some really good insight.
What you're saying to me doesn't sound like rocket science, but for the younger generation to be able to listen, learn, have curiosity, that passion and empathy and patience is probably the bit that's...
Patience is a big thing.
Is the bit. It's not going to happen today. I think I've heard you say previously it's like be who you are today, not where you want to be, or something along those lines. It's this ridiculous level of expectation, I think, in the other generation. Just keep pounding and things happen. And your 10,000 hours under your belt, just don't question until you get there.
It'll just click.
It just clicks and things start to happen and you'll be successful. And
the other thing, Johnny, you find in your career is, so as you get older, all of your mates get older and they start growing up through those organisations as well. So if you've curated and looked after all of your personal relationships with the guys that you went through uni with and, that you've been drinking down the pub with and whatever else, all of a sudden when they're in their 30s, late 30s, 40s, and they start to take on those executive positions, they become really powerful members of your network.
Totally.
As well. And then you're referring stuff to each other all the time.
That's right. So it's just, I guess through both our entrepreneurial journeys, it's just investing in the learning and experience is inevitably invaluable over time.
One of the other things that we've done at Lord, and again, I don't know how my partners will feel about me saying this, but I'm saying it anyway, is we've actually KPI'd our staff now on having to have one new interaction every week with someone who's not a client and who's not necessarily an owner of agricultural land.
Right.
And so I sort of call them butchers, bakers and candlestick makers, I want them interacting with an agronomist, a financial advisor, an accountant, a banker, a solicitor in their local geography. And so what used to happen, even before you and I was sort of thought about, is in those business communities, in those small towns, all of the bankers, solicitors and whoever else, they all knew each other, valuers, real estate agents, they all knew each other and they'd refer work to each other. And that's been lost in some respects. And so I'm encouraging our guys to make sure that they're going and building relationships with people who are, in the modern lexicon, influencers. And so, but people who are influencers to people who own the land or to people who want to buy the land. And so if you're talking to those people and you're building relationships in the broader farming business community, then you will get referrals.
Totally. And stick at it.
And you'll get them because none of your peers are doing it.
Correct. And that's the bit I love about our business. It's a people business. It's a services business and it's relationships, which is built on trust and credibility. And that's very hard to replicate with all the tech in the world. And I think that's what kind of stands out.
And a world of immediate gratification.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Danny, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time and such great insights, and stay in touch.
Can you, Johnny? Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Danny.
Thanks, mate.